What if I told you that some of the most famous facts you learned in school were completely wrong? You know, those historical tidbits that everyone just accepts as truth? Yeah, some of those are about as accurate as a history textbook written by, well, someone who wasn't actually there. From Christopher Columbus discovering America, spoiler alert, he didn't, to Napoleon being short, nope, not really. History is filled with myths we've accepted as truth. But today, we're setting the record straight. We're diving deep into the murky waters of historical misinformation to uncover the truth. Stay with me as we uncover some of the most shocking historical lies you were taught in school. Get ready to question everything you thought you knew because things are about to get interesting. Okay, let's start with a big one. The myth of Christopher Columbus discovering America. For centuries, we were told that in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and stumbled upon this vast, unknown land. He got the gold, the glory, and a whole day named after him. But here's the thing, how can you discover a land that was already inhabited? I mean, it's not like the Americas were just chilling, unpopulated, waiting for a European explorer to come claim them, right? By the time Columbus arrived, there were millions, yes, millions of people already living in North and South America. We're talking vibrant, complex societies with their own cultures, languages, and histories spanning thousands of years. So, to say Columbus discovered America is not only inaccurate, it's actually erasing the presence and contributions of the indigenous peoples who were already there. And get this, Columbus wasn't even the first European to reach the Americas. The Vikings, led by Leif Erikson, had already sailed to North America nearly 500 years before Columbus. They even established settlements in what is now Newfoundland, Canada. So much for Columbus being the first, huh? Look, I get it. Columbus's voyages were a big deal. They marked the beginning of sustained contact between Europe and the Americas. But let's be clear about what those voyages really were. The start of European colonization, which had devastating consequences for indigenous populations. Calling it a discovery glosses over the violence, disease, and cultural destruction that followed Columbus's arrival. It ignores the rich history of the people who were already living here. It's like walking into someone else's house and claiming you discovered it. Just not cool, Columbus, not cool. So, next time you hear someone talking about Columbus discovering America, remember, it's just not true. It's time to ditch this outdated narrative and acknowledge the true history of the Americas, starting with the indigenous peoples who called this land home long before Columbus set sail. Let's move on to another historical misconception that's been perpetuated for far too long. The idea that the pyramids of Egypt were built by slaves toiling under brutal conditions. You know the image? Thousands of miserable souls forced to drag massive stones under the scorching desert sun. It's a powerful image, sure, but it's also a deeply flawed one. Modern archaeology paints a very different picture of the people who built the pyramids. Excavations near the pyramid sites have uncovered vast worker villages complete with bakeries, breweries, and even cemeteries. These were not the dwellings of mistreated slaves. These were organized communities of skilled laborers who were respected for their work, and speaking of respect, the way these workers were buried speaks volumes. Archaeologists have found tombs of pyramid builders located near the pyramids themselves, a sign of honor that would never have been bestowed upon slaves. Some of these tombs even contained inscriptions praising the workers' skills and dedication. The evidence suggests that the pyramid builders were not a reluctant or coerced workforce, but rather skilled laborers who took pride in their craft. They were well-fed, well-cared for, and honored for their contributions to these monumental projects. So, while the work was undoubtedly difficult, it was also deeply valued and respected. This misconception likely stemmed from a misinterpretation of ancient texts and a healthy dose of Hollywood dramatization. But the reality, as is often the case, is far more nuanced than the myth. The pyramids stand as a testament not to the suffering of slaves, but to the ingenuity, skill, and collaboration of a dedicated workforce. So next time you marvel at the grandeur of the pyramids, remember the skilled hands and brilliant minds that built them, not as slaves but as respected artisans who left an indelible mark on human history. Alright, time to debunk a myth that's more about stature than anything else. The infamous shortness of Napoleon Bonaparte. We've all heard the jokes, right? The Napoleon complex describing short men who overcompensate with aggression. It's a stereotype that's been around for centuries. But it's based on a big, fat lie. Napoleon wasn't actually short, at least not by the standards of his time. He was about 5'6", some sources say 5'7", which was average height for a man in France in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. So, where did this whole tiny Napoleon idea come from? Well, it seems like a bit of historical mistranslation, mixed with a healthy dose of British propaganda, is to blame. See, the French measured height in paces, which are slightly longer than British inches. When Napoleon's height was converted into British measurements, it made him appear shorter than he actually was. And the British press, never ones to miss an opportunity to take a jab at their French rivals, were all too happy to spread the myth of the diminutive emperor. They used it to mock Napoleon and portray him as a small, insignificant man trying to conquer the world. But Napoleon was anything but insignificant. He was a brilliant military strategist, a shrewd politician, and a charismatic leader who left a lasting impact on Europe. His height, or lack thereof, had nothing to do with his accomplishments or his ambitions. So, the next time you hear someone cracking jokes about Napoleon's height, remember it's just not true. He wasn't a towering giant, but he wasn't a pint-sized emperor either. He was a man of average height who achieved extraordinary things, and maybe, just maybe, we should focus on those accomplishments instead of perpetuating a myth that's been debunked time and time again. Hold on to your hats, because we're about to shatter another pervasive historical myth, the idea that people in the Middle Ages believed the Earth was flat. It's a misconception that's been repeated so often that it's practically become common knowledge. But it's time to set the record straight. Medieval people were not flat earthers. By the time we reached the Middle Ages, the idea of a spherical Earth was already well established in educated circles. We can thank the ancient Greeks for that. Philosophers like Pythagoras and Aristotle, way back in the 6th and 4th centuries BC, had already figured out that the Earth was a sphere, not a flat disk. And this knowledge didn't disappear with the fall of the Roman Empire. It was preserved and passed down through scholars in the Middle Ages. In fact, many medieval texts and illustrations depict the Earth as a sphere. So where did this whole flat Earth Middle Ages idea come from? Well, it seems to have originated in the 19th century, during a time when there was a lot of romanticizing of the past, and a tendency to portray earlier eras as more ignorant than they actually were. It was a way to create a narrative of progress, with the modern, enlightened 19th century contrasting sharply with the supposedly superstitious and backward Middle Ages. But this narrative is simply not supported by historical evidence. So the next time you hear someone say that people in the Middle Ages thought the Earth was flat, you can confidently tell them they're wrong. The spherical Earth was known long before the Middle Ages, and it continued to be accepted knowledge throughout that period. Alright, let's wrap things up by tackling a myth that's practically become a cliché. The idea that Albert Einstein, one of the most brilliant minds in human history, actually failed math in school. Yeah, you heard that right. The guy who came up with the theory of relativity, the guy who revolutionized our understanding of space, time and gravity, supposedly couldn't pass algebra. Sounds a little fishy, doesn't it? That's because it is fishy. It's completely and utterly false. Einstein didn't struggle with math, he excelled at it. In fact, he was a math whiz from a young age. By the time he was 15, he had already mastered calculus. Calculus! The bane of many a high school student's existence, and Einstein was mastering it in his early teens. So, how did this ridiculous rumor get started? Well, it seems like a classic case of misinterpreting the facts. Apparently there was some confusion about the grading system at Einstein's school. Some accounts suggest that he actually scored very high in math, but it was marked down on his report card due to a different grading scale. Regardless of the specifics, one thing is clear. Einstein was a mathematical genius. His work was groundbreaking and it required a deep understanding of complex mathematical concepts. So, the next time you hear someone say, "Oh, it's okay if you're not good at math, even Einstein failed," you can set them straight. Einstein was a mathematical prodigy, and his story is a testament to the power of curiosity, imagination, and yes, a strong foundation in mathematics. So, how many of these lies had you believed before today? It's okay to admit it. We've all been fooled by historical myths at some point. History is full of them. It's easy for these misconceptions to get passed down as fact, but it's up to us to question what we're told and seek the truth. What other history myths should we expose? Let me know in the comments below. I'm always up for a good historical myth-busting session. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on more mind-blowing facts. Together, let's keep digging deeper, challenging assumptions, and uncovering the fascinating, complex, and often surprising truth about our past.